Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for attending, and we greatly appreciate it. I am Siobhan Andrews, student president of the new University of Arizona Global Campus Women in STEM organization. As an information technology student here, I am thrilled to say that the University of Arizona Global Campus Women in STEM is a student-led organization that focuses on STEM careers for women. Our club includes the UAGC Women in Technology International Chapter, better known as WITI, and the UAGC chapter of Girls Who Code, College Loop. Today we're going to talk about building your legacy. But before we can talk about that, we must define it. So what is a legacy? Well, Merriam-Webster describes it as something that is handed down from our ancestors, predecessors, or from the past. So today we're going to learn how to build from experiences of our speakers. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready to hear their stories. But before we can listen, I would like to thank you again for joining us, and I will pass it over to our officers to introduce themselves as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carey Seuss, Vice President.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mayan Colden, and I am the Secretary.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yam Mitchell, and I'm your Communication Officer.
And hello, everyone. I am Dr. Karen Lynn Daniels-Ivy. I am the Department Chair of our Technology Studies organization. We are so excited about this webinar today. Oh my goodness, we are in a position to hear from a set of legacy pioneers who have been extremely helpful, beneficial, successful within their STEM walks today. One once said that your legacy grows with each new experience, and we are in for a wonderful experience today. So take notes and sit back and you will gain something for sure. This webinar is a historical gathering of legacy STEM pioneers. Thank you to all of our panelists who will be speaking on the panel today. And also thank you to the historically Black colleges and universities who are joining us today. Throughout the webinar, we'll have you to place in chat hello, so later on we can recognize you, your name, and the name of your HBCU in attending. And so without any further delay, I would like to welcome to the mic Carey, who will introduce to us our speakers for the event today. Carey, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ivy. Again, good afternoon and welcome. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our esteemed speakers. While I share their accomplishments, Mayan will post in the chat full bios on each speaker. Our second speaker, retired Colonel of the United States Air Force, Dr. Guion Bluford Jr., was the first African-American to fly in space in 1983. He was also the first African-American to return to space 4 times, to be awarded NASA's coveted gold astronaut pin, and the first African-American to be awarded the United States Air Force Command Pilot Astronaut Wings. He was inducted into the International Space Hall of Fame in 1997, the U.S. Astronaut Hall of Fame in 2010, and the National Aviation Hall of Fame in 2019. He has been awarded numerous awards, including the Department of Defense's Superior Service. I now pass on the mic to Dr. Karen Ivy.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks for all of the background on our excellent speakers for today. I'm going to pass the mic over to Mayan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Women in STEM. Next, we have Dr. Guion S. Bluford Jr.
It's good to see all of you. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Ivy, for inviting me. It's interesting enough, people ask me, did I want to be an astronaut when I was a kid? Well, I grew up in the 1940s and 1950s. So for me, flying in space was a comic book thing, people just didn't do that. But I got interested in airplanes. And as a kid, I made lots of model airplanes and read books on airplanes. And I was fascinated with airplanes, particularly how they were made and how they flew. And it was an interesting time because we were in the midst of the Cold War. And so the Navy and Air Force were constantly developing airplanes all the time. And so if you asked me as a kid what that airplane is, I could definitely tell you what it was. And I could probably tell you how fast it flew and how high it flew and that sort of thing. So I became interested in airplanes as a kid and tried to stay with it. I was very fortunate in the sense that I grew up in a integrated neighborhood, so I had great public schools. I also had great role models. My mother was a school teacher, and my father was a mechanical engineer. And so he enjoyed what he did. And I sort of made a decision as a kid that when I became an adult, I wanted to do something that I really enjoyed doing. So for me, becoming an engineer was high on my list. As I grew up, my heroes were engineers. Jack Northrop of Northrop Corporation, Kelly Johnson of Lockheed running the Skunk Works, and Dick Whitcomb of NASA. These are the guys who were developing the latest and greatest of airplanes. And by the time I got into high school, I pretty much knew that I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. And I knew that I needed to work on my STEM stuff, my science and math stuff, and make sure that I gained as much background as I could. And I tried to do that while I was going through high school. In 1960, I applied to Penn State. For me, Penn State was my number one choice because it had a department in aerospace and aeronautical engineering. And I was very fortunate to get accepted. And so from 60 to 64, I was at Penn State. When I went to Penn State, I envisioned myself getting a degree in aerospace engineering and going to work for McDonnell Douglas or Boeing or one of some of the great aircraft companies. But I went to a school that had mandatory ROTC, something that I'd never really considered. So I took mandatory ROTC. All of us had to take two years of mandatory ROTC. And I made a decision that I would go advanced ROTC and start my career in the Air Force. And so that's what I did. So I went advanced ROTC. My plan was to go into the Air Force as an engineer. But between my junior and senior year, I went to ROTC summer camp and found out that I could fly airplanes. And I said, wow, could fly airplanes. So in my senior year, I was a pilot candidate for the Air Force. And I went through my private pilot. I got my private pilot's license as part of the ROTC program. And so when I graduated in 64, I had a degree in aerospace engineering. I had my private pilot's license, and I was a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. I went to pilot training at Williams Air Force Base. And upon graduation, I got fighters. It was interesting going to Williams because I had never seen a black pilot. I had heard about the Tuskegee Airmen, but I'd never really met one. And I was fortunate enough to see my first black pilot. His name was Chappie James. Towards the end of pilot training, we had a fighter pilot come in with his F4 and to talk to us about flying fighters. And I was anxious to hear this guy talk. And then I was amazed to find out that he was a black guy. He was a full colonel black guy who talked about flying jet airplanes. So I'm pretty sure that got me excited and really got me into fighters. I ended up flying fighters, and then after that, I was an instructor pilot for 5 years. And I knew after I started being an instructor pilot that I really wanted to get back into engineering. And so I took a bunch of courses from the University of California, Berkeley, in preparation of going to grad school. I wasn't sure how I was going to go to grad school. I was thinking about getting out of the Air Force and going to grad school on the GI Bill. But just prior to my commitment to the Air Force came to an end, I applied for a program at the Air Force, and the Air Force decided to send me back to grad school. And so I was very fortunate to go back to grad school to get a master's degree in aerospace engineering. I enjoyed the experience so much that, hey, Air Force asked me to stay on for a PhD, and that's what I did. And then after doing that, I ended up being an aerospace engineer at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. For me, that was a great job. I was a flyer who was in the midst of running an engineering branch that was doing a lot of high-end aero work for the Air Force as well as everybody else. I ran a branch that did work not only in the Air Force, but we worked with NASA and DARPA and the Navy and really the Israelis. So it was just an exciting experience all the way around. In 77, 78, I had to go back to a flying job. And I started looking around for a flying job. I wanted something that I could use my technical skill as well as fly. And I was starting to have problems looking around the Air Force to try and find a job that I could use my technical skill as well as my flying skill. And at the same time, NASA was looking for astronauts. I really hadn't thought about being an astronaut at the time because I'm basically an airplane guy. But I applied anyway because it gave me an opportunity to use my technical skill and learn a lot about the space program. So I applied in 78. I was one of 8,000 people who applied. I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised to recognize that I was a candidate, a finalist in the program. But I recognized when I saw the other finalists that I didn't think very highly of my possibility of being selected. But in January of 78, I came to work one cold morning. I had heard on the radio that NASA had selected 35 astronauts, and I got a call later on that morning indicating that I had been selected. So I was totally thrilled with the opportunity to come to the space program. For me, going into NASA, it was a great experience because it gave me an opportunity to learn about the space side of the business. And I also came on board to work for 8 people, both in the astronaut as well as in the program. So it was a great experience for me all the way around. I also enjoyed the fact that I came in at a time when we were still developing the shuttle. So I got to see the development of the vehicle, help work in some of these simulators, did the training, and I was at Edwards Air Force Base in 81 when STS-1 came in and landed, and I realized we really had a fabulous machine when John and Crip brought the airplane in. So I was looking for an opportunity to fly like all the other astronauts in the program. And in 82, I was told that given an opportunity to fly on STS-8. And in 83, I flew for the first time on Challenger. I flew on a night flight, which was unique because we had never flown the vehicle at night. I had the responsibility of putting a satellite into orbit, which I did. And then I also worked with some of the other guys with some of the experiments on board. It was a fabulous experience. When I got down, I realized that I really wanted to stay around to fly again, not only because I liked the experience, but also to encourage some of the other Black astronauts in the program to fly. I wanted to be a mentor for them, to encourage them to fly as well. I had an opportunity to fly again in 85 on a US-German flight. We put a laboratory in space. I was a senior mission specialist on that and had to learn a lot of different scientific things in order to do 76 different experiments on board the shuttle, including learning how to speak German, which was an interesting challenge for me. We had the accident in 86, and I really wanted to stay around to make sure we flew the shuttle again. And I owed it to those people who had gotten killed, including Ron McNair. And then I had an opportunity to fly in 90 on STS-39, which was a Department of Defense flight looking at Star Wars, supporting the Strategic Defense Initiative Office. It was a fancy, very complicated flight where we deployed and retrieved an experimental payload on orbit. And then finally, in December of 92, I flew on a classified DoD flight, which I also was the principal guy with reference to deploying the satellite. So I had an opportunity to fly 4 times in the space program, an exciting experience all the way around. After, what do I do next? Well, I returned to the aerospace program. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. And as a result, I came to Cleveland and joined a small company, 8A minority-owned company, and we won a major contract at NASA Glenn, $185 million, 400 people, and I ran an operation where I had 76 PhDs, and we did all sorts of high-level aero work. So I returned to the thing that I loved, and that was being an aerospace engineer. So when I look back on my career, basically I'm an aerospace engineer who's been a fighter pilot, who's been a scientist, who's been an astronaut, and I owe that all to STEM and the training that I got growing up in Philadelphia.
Great story, Dr. Bluford. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear about your exciting. It's exciting. You said something about experiments in space. That was just, I can't even imagine that. It was just so inspiring to hear your story. So I really appreciate you sharing with us. I want to thank you all for joining us, answering our questions, and showing us a piece of you and your legacy. So I really appreciate everything. And I'm trying not to cry because it's excitement and just hearing your story. So I am just so ecstatic about this. So thank you all for joining us today. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Lisa Sims.
Thank you, Mayan. And thank you to all our STEM pioneers for sharing your experience with us. I am Lisa Sims, the lead faculty advisor for the Women in STEM. And I know everybody has just been blessed to hear about how our panelists have persevered through their STEM careers, and that has motivated us and encouraged us to do more and to not give up on our journey. And I just want to thank them for being here, and I thank you for being here as well. And I want to encourage you to join the Women in STEM. We have 2 ways that you can do that. You can join either via UAGC Connect, or you can also join via our LinkedIn group, and I will go ahead and put that in the chat. And so that way you can be a part of our organization and you can stay abreast of our events that will be going on so that you won't miss exciting webinars such as this one. And then also I want to invite you to go ahead and save the date for October the 29th from 1 p.m. Pacific time to 2:30 Pacific time. We're going to have our cybersecurity awareness event, and we're going to have panelists from Microsoft who are going to speak to us about different areas of cybersecurity, such as the dark web and other cybersecurity areas that we may or may not be aware of. So I highly want to encourage you to join us there, and I will put the flyer for that event also in the chat so that you can have that and you can go ahead and register for that event. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and we once again thank everyone who attended. We thank our STEM pioneers, and we thank our attendees for tuning in and stay abreast of what's coming next for the Women in STEM. And remember to continue to persevere. And even though you have obstacles, you can overcome those obstacles to do greatness. And so with that, stay blessed and stay safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, all of our panelists. And we want to also give a special thank you to all of our historical Black colleges and universities who attended with us today. Florida, FMU, thank you for attending, and others who may not have spotted your name in the chat. Thanks to everyone who attended, all of our panelists as well.